Overview. The Millionaire Next Door is a book about U.S. millionaires, including a discussion on how they got to be millionaires. The key finding that surprised the authors is that the majority of millionaires do not stand out. They live in modest homes in average neighborhoods, run blue-collar businesses, and do not spend money on flashy cars, watches, or jewelry. In fact, most of their neighbors have no idea they are millionaires. Authors Thomas J. Stanley and William D. Danko make a distinction between high net worth millionaires and those households that earn an annual income of $150,000 or less, but have a smaller net worth than they should. The authors call the high net worth folks PAWs for prodigious accumulators of wealth. The lagging net worth folks are UAWs for under accumulators of wealth. The authors note that high net worth millionaires are in the better position. Their futures are secure, whereas those with less net worth than they ought to have must continue to work hard every year or jeopardize their lifestyles and their futures. The authors take a close look at how high net worth millionaires got to where they are. They point out that most own their own businesses, became self-reliant early because they receive no money from their parents, live below their means, have budgets and engage in financial planning, invest a lot of their income, and enjoy relatively low income tax rates by not quickly turning over investments. The Millionaire Next Door offers a roadmap that anyone with a decent income can follow to become a millionaire. Analysis of key takeaways. Key takeaway 1. There are two types of millionaires. Those with high net worth relative to their income are prodigious accumulators of wealth, PAWs, and those with net worth well below what their income suggests it should be are under accumulators of wealth, UAWs. Analysis. A lot of PAWs earn less annually than UAWs. The difference between them is that PAWs save, invest, and grow their money, while UAWs spend most of theirs. This means that PAWs have brighter futures. They have set money aside for their retirement years. UAWs, in contrast, will either have to work even after they reach retirement age or accept a significantly diminished lifestyle. Because they are providing for their future, PAWs do not worry. UAWs fret about how they're going to cope when their income trails off. Most people know stories about siblings who have gone separate ways when it came to dealing with money. One of those stories is the biblical telling of the prodigal son. The story involves the youngest of two sons asking his father to give him, right away, the money that he planned to pass on to the son in the future. The young man then travels to a faraway place, spends the money on a lavish lifestyle, and returns home broke and chastened. Meanwhile, the older son works hard alongside his father to continue building the family and his own wealth. The older son, if a modern U.S. citizen, would be a PAW, while the younger son represents a UAW. Many people can tell you stories about ambitious young business people who make fortunes, lose them, make them again, and lose them again. One of the tragedies with UAWs is that they never seem to learn. If they have money, they spend it without thinking about the future. Too many are intent on living for the day and showing off to family, friends, and business colleagues rather than planning for a less ostentatious but comfortable lifestyle. Key takeaways. 1. There are two types of millionaires. Those with high net worth relative to their income are prodigious accumulators of wealth, PAWs, and those with net worth well below what their income suggests it should be are under accumulators of wealth, UAWs. 2. Most PAWs live below their means. They could afford fancy homes, cars, clothes, and luxuries, but prefer to save and invest money instead of spending it lavishly. 3. Most PAWs have budgets and stick to them. Most UAWs do not have budgets. 4. The majority of PAWs own their own businesses. Most of these companies are not exciting, such as plumbing contractors, used car dealerships, and farm operators. 5. Most PAWs believe financial independence trumps displays of high social status. 6. Most PAWs did not get money from their parents to help them start their businesses. If they have degrees, most did not receive money from their parents to attend university. 7. Most PAWs are big investors, putting 20% of their income each year into savings accounts, stocks, real estate, and other investments. 8. The income tax rates of most PAWs are low because their incomes are good, although not in the stratosphere, and they do not often sell investments because that would trigger income tax. 9. Most PAWs devote considerable time to financial planning and hire experts, such as certified public accountants, tax attorneys, and estate attorneys to help them. 10. Most PAWs buy a used car and keep it for many years before buying their next car. 11. Most PAWs do not give substantial and ongoing cash gifts to their children or grandchildren in an attempt to make them self-sufficient. However, many pay for their children and grandchildren's educations. Key Takeaway 2. Most PAWs live below their means. They could afford fancy homes, cars, clothes, and luxuries, but prefer to save and invest money instead of spending it lavishly. Analysis. PAWs typically have a modest home in a working-class or middle-class neighborhood. They also drive non-luxury, U.S.-manufactured cars. They buy those cars used and keep them several years. They have few luxuries like expensive watches and jewelry. They do not scrimp on necessities or education, but they prefer investing most of the money left after expenses rather than spending it. Because they do not look the part of a millionaire, most of their neighbors do not know that they are. The public is always amazed to hear stories about people who worked at modestly paying jobs all their lives, yet they left million-dollar estates behind. These people were PAWs. They were frugal, investing their money rather than spending it on unnecessary expenses. One such PAW was Ronald Reed of Brattleboro, Vermont. Reed, who died in 2014, was a partner with his brother in an auto repair shop for many years. After retiring, he became bored and took a part-time janitor's job at JCPenney. The lifelong bachelor left an estate of $8 million, surprising the whole town. He hated spending money, his attorney Lori Rowell said. When he visited Rowell, he would park several blocks from her office so he would not have to put money in the parking meters near the office. One of his friends, who felt sorry for him because he wore a battered baseball cap for years, knitted him a hat. He loved putting the money he saved into the stock market, always choosing dividend-generating stocks. Reed left $4.8 million to Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, its biggest gift ever, and $1.2 million to the Brooks Library. Some would say that Reed's frugality was over the top, but there is no question that he was the epitome of a PAW. Key Takeaway 3. Most PAWs have budgets and stick to them. Most UAWs do not have budgets. Analysis. Most PAWs take a systemic approach to saving and investing wealth. They set financial goals, then create a budget to help them reach those goals. If a PAW couple set a goal of investing 25% of their pre-tax income every month, they would then prepare a budget to achieve that goal. The budget would specify the amount they will spend for food, clothes, transportation, entertainment, and other categories each month. Once they create the budget, they stick with it. That discipline is what gets them to their financial goal. Thomas C. Corley, who offers advice on how people who make good money can rein in their expenses so they can become millionaires, not only believes in budgeting, but also has developed spending category parameters that he says everyone should follow. One rule is that a family should spend no more than 25% of its income on housing, whether it is buying or renting. Another rule is to spend no more than 10% of household income on entertainment, whether it is eating out or attending movies and concerts. Another rule is to limit auto payments to 5% of a family's monthly after-taxes income. That would be tough for some people, even those who are making a six-figure income. Corley also says people should never lease a car because there will be no investment left when the lease expires. Another rule is not to accumulate credit card debt. Still another is that if you are working for someone else, put as much money as possible in a tax-sheltered company retirement account. Many PAWs are diligent enough about budgeting that they will probably come up with their own spending category parameters. Corley's parameters are a good place to start and to use as a springboard toward discussions about how much a family should spend on each category in its budget. Corley knows the importance of budgeting firsthand. His family were millionaires, but lost their entire fortune. Key Takeaway 4. The majority of PAWs own their own businesses. Most of these companies are not exciting, such as plumbing contractors, used car dealerships, and farm operators. Analysis. 2/3 of U.S. millionaires own their own businesses. Most of the businesses are not flashy, such as entertainment or high-tech. They are businesses that meet crucial needs, such as plumbing, electrical contracting, auto repair, and road paving. In addition to those who own what the authors of The Millionaire Next Door refer to as dull, normal businesses, the self-employed include professionals such as doctors, dentists, lawyers, and accountants. What POWs like about owning their own business is the freedom it gives them to make a living the way they want. A new type of self-made millionaires who become PAWs is what are known as millionaire kids. These are young people in their teens or preteens who come up with a great idea, execute it well, and make millions while they are still minors. It should come as no surprise that many either have internet-based businesses or use the internet to sell their goods or services. A case in point is Ashley Qualis of Detroit. Ashley was a whiz at web page design. She decided to let the world know about her skills by starting a website, whateverlife.com, in 2004. The site had few visitors until she began offering free MySpace designs to her junior high school classmates. She began getting orders by word of mouth for her unusual, personal designs, and by 2005, the business took off. Her revenue jumped when she began taking part in Google's AdSense program. It involves Google putting ads on her site and sharing revenue with her based on the number of ads clicked. Noticing that her site was generating buzz, companies asked her if they could advertise on the site. That ratcheted up her earnings even further. The site is now generating millions of dollars in ad revenue a year. Like a true PAW, in 2006, Ashley bought a $250,000 home in the Detroit suburb of Southgate, Michigan, way under the price she could afford. Key Takeaway 5. Most PAWs believe financial independence trumps displays of high social status. Analysis. Most PAWs do not care about ostentatious lifestyles and could not care less about whether others are impressed with them either. They do not value money for the material things it could give them, like showcase homes, cars, and clothes. They value it for the present and future comfort it offers. Their goal is to live all their lives, including retirement, financially worry-free. That requires investment. UAWs, in contrast, want to impress those around them, such as their relatives, neighbors, and business colleagues. This requires buying expensive homes, cars, and clothes that soak up money that could be used for their futures. Because most people envision millionaires as free-spending jet-setters, they find it hard to comprehend that many wealthy people lead rather simple lives and do not spend that much. Some of the moderate spenders are not just millionaires, but billionaires. Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, owns a $7 million home in Palo Alto, California. Given that California real estate prices are very high and that Zuckerberg is worth $33 billion, he could afford much more than a $7 million home. In addition, Zuckerberg drives a $30,000 Volkswagen, and he wears the same gray t-shirt and hooded sweatshirt to work every day. Investor Warren Buffett, who is the world's second or third richest man, depending on the year, lived in the same modest home in a middle-class neighborhood of his native Omaha for decades. His favorite restaurant meal is a hamburger. Zuckerberg and Buffett are among the super-rich who do not lead flashy lives and who invest rather than spend. Most of the world's millionaire PAWs follow their lead. Key Takeaway 6. Most PAWs did not get money from their parents to help them start their businesses, and if they have degrees, most did not receive money from their parents to attend university. Analysis. The parents of most PAWs either did not have the money to help their children attend university or start a business, or they made a conscious decision not to give them money in a bid to make them self-reliant. In a few cases, parents did want to give their children money for university or a business, but the children turned them down. That is because, in exchange for their financial support, the parents wanted to exert too much control over their children in adulthood, telling them what degree to obtain, what kind of business to start, and how to manage the business. Jean-Paul DeJoria is a PAW who grew up poor in Los Angeles. His mother, a single parent, struggled to keep the family going. When he was 9, he and his brother began selling newspapers and Christmas cards to help his mother make ends meet. One day, she told the boys that although there was food in the refrigerator, she had just 27 cents in her pocket. DeJoria knew that there would be no money from his family to start a career. After a stint in the Navy and holding a series of dead-end jobs, in 1980, he borrowed $700 to co-fund the Paul Mitchell Systems hair care company with hairdresser Paul Mitchell. At one point, he was selling shampoo out of a car, which was also his home. He and Mitchell built their company into a powerhouse in the industry. DeJorio went on to co-found the Patron Spirits Tequila Company and invest in dozens of other businesses. He ended up becoming a billionaire. What spurred him to achieve as a young man was the realization that he would need to make it entirely on his own. Remembering his difficult childhood, he became a major donor to orphanages and child hunger programs later in life. Key Takeaway 7. Most PAWs are big investors, putting 20% of their income each year into savings accounts, stocks, real estate, and other investments. Analysis. PAWs actually enjoy investing. Yes, it takes time, but they see it as time well spent. They have a goal in mind when they invest of being able to afford a comfortable lifestyle when they retire. They do not want to worry about scrambling for money late in life, which, for many people, requires either scrimping on necessities or continuing to work when they should be enjoying retirement. So PAWs continue looking for investment opportunities, particularly in real estate and stocks. They study those opportunities carefully, obtain advice from professionals, then seize the opportunities, and they usually hold on to their investment for many years rather than sell them in a year or two. Warren Buffett is the quintessential PAWs investor. The self-made mega-billionaire both owns companies outright and has large stakes in others. He invests in businesses that he understands, many of which manufacture products or offer services that everyone consumes, such as Coca-Cola, or businesses that have little competition, such as railroads that dominate certain sections of the United States. He also buys the stock of companies that offer products he likes, such as Dairy Queen restaurants. He holds stocks for years unless changes in a business, an industry, or in the general economic climate cause the stock to tumble. Buffett avoids stocks of companies he sees as fads or that he does not understand, like many tech stocks. Investors scoffed at Buffett when he refused to buy tech stocks during the dot-com bubble that built from 1997 to 2000. They thought he was missing a chance to make a killing. Buffett was vindicated when the bubble burst on March 10, 2000, and many tech investors suffered huge losses. However, in 2011, Buffett did begin investing in one tech company. By September of that year, his company owned more than 68 million shares of International Business Machines. Most PAW investors cannot hope to become Warren Buffett, but they can follow his prudent investing formula of buying often less exciting stocks whose products or services everyone uses and holding them for the long term. Key Takeaway 8. The income tax rates of most PAWs are low because their incomes are good, although not in the stratosphere, and they do not often sell investments because that would trigger income tax. Analysis. A high tax rate can cripple people's ability to invest by eating up too much of their money. The authors of The Millionaire Next Door discovered that the average PAW millionaires pay only 7% of their income in taxes. One reason is that most PAWs are company owners, and business expenses lower their taxable income. Another is that PAWs rarely sell stock, real estate, or other properties that would trigger a surge in tax liability. Much has been written about large U.S. companies using dodgy strategies to pay minimal tax or even no tax at all. Much has also been written about wealthy individuals using tax havens, such as the Cayman Islands, to avoid paying their share of U.S. taxes. These kinds of practices anger most U.S. citizens, who see them as unfair and immoral. Typical U.S. middle-class earners pay up to 30% of their income in taxes. One reason is that most do not have business expense deductions that a typical PAW has, and many of those who buy stocks, bonds, and real estate sell these investments within a short time rather than holding on to them, as PAWs do. When they sell, they must pay income tax on the difference between the price they paid for the investment and the price they sold it for. A lot of taxpayers mistakenly believe there is nothing they can do to lower their tax bill, that whatever will be, will be. PAWs know better. They plan their finances to limit their tax bill. Key Takeaway 9. Most PAWs devote considerable time to financial planning and hire experts, such as certified public accountants, tax attorneys, and estate attorneys to help them. Analysis. Most PAWs view the use of financial experts as an investment rather than as a liability, that is, simply a big bill to pay. That is because such experts' advice can help PAWs save a lot more money than they paid for the advice. Yes, the average PAWs do work hard to learn the ins and outs of financial planning, but they know that does not make them experts. To make sure they are doing everything they can to increase their income and limit their tax liability, they go to experts. Most find estate attorneys especially valuable. Both federal and state governments tax the assets left by those who have passed away. Better to come up with strategies to give some of that money away rather than have to pay a huge estate bill on it. In recent decades, the estate tax planning regimen of a few U.S. millionaires has included what might be called the nuclear option. This means renouncing U.S. citizenship for a country that carries a much smaller estate tax. One of the wealthy who used the nuclear option was John T. Dorrance III, an heir to the Campbell soup fortune. In 1995, Dorrance obtained Irish citizenship because their estate tax was 2% as opposed to the staggering 55% federal tax in the U.S. At the time, Dorrance was worth $1.3 billion. If he had died as a U.S. citizen, his estate tax would have been $715 million versus $26 million in Ireland. Dorrance moved to Ireland so he could pass most of his fortune to his heirs. Many Americans condemned him. Bill Clinton was the president of the U.S. when Dorrance became an Irish citizen. A number of officials in the Clinton administration ripped him and a handful of other Americans for using the U.S. system not only to live well but to increase his wealth and then duck his fair share of taxes by becoming citizens elsewhere. However, Dorrance had good reason for making this choice. The estate tax left a bad taste in the Dorrance family's mouth way back in 1930, when John T. Dorrance Sr., John III's grandfather, died. Although the family lived in Pennsylvania, John Sr. contended that his own residence was in New Jersey, where he also had a home and the estate tax was lower than in Pennsylvania. When he died, the state tax agencies in both Pennsylvania and New Jersey took the Dorrance family to court, alleging they significantly underpaid their estate taxes. The family ended up paying $34 million of the $115 million value of the estate in estate taxes, a 30% estate tax bill just at the state level. Key Takeaway 10. Most PAWs buy a used car and keep it for many years before buying their next car. Analysis. PAWs have no use for cars that have hefty price tags, such as new model Bentleys or the latest top-of-the-line Mercedes. They want to save and invest the difference between the cost of a luxury car and a standard U.S. manufactured model, like a Ford Compact. This can be tens of thousands of dollars. PAWs are interested in a car that drives well, is reliable, and looks good. They do not buy a car to show off in front of the neighbors. They buy late-model used cars rather than new ones to save even more. Decades ago, U.S. auto companies used to make cars that would begin wearing out in about 5 years. They did this deliberately to force customers to buy new cars often, thereby keeping the company's revenue rolling in. This approach was called planned obsolescence. In the 1970s, Japanese cars overtook U.S. models as the best in the world in quality. U.S. citizens who bought Japanese models learned that they lasted a lot longer than U.S. models before they needed to be replaced. This became a selling point that hurt U.S. brands, forcing U.S. automakers to scrap planned obsolescence to compete with the Japanese. One result was that cars began lasting 10, 20, or more years. Some cars have hit 1 million miles and kept going. In the days of planned obsolescence, buying a used car was risky, so many people avoided buying them. Today, used models make a lot more sense. PAWs are probably at the top of the list of those who are glad the days of planned obsolescence are gone. Key Takeaway 11. Most PAWs do not give substantial and ongoing cash gifts to their children or grandchildren in an attempt to make them self-sufficient. However, many pay for their children and grandchildren's education. Analysis. Most PAWs know that self-reliance was a key to their success. They were not born with a silver spoon in their mouths. They had to work for everything. But they made it, and when they took time to reflect on why, they realized that a key to their success was that they were not given everything. Most came to the realization that it would be a detriment to their children to give them substantial amounts of money periodically. It would kill the incentive and drive they needed to make their way in the world. The exception to this rule is that PAWs believe it is valuable to pay for their children and grandchildren's education, since a good education usually means a good livelihood. The author Pearl Buck wrote 2 books that told the story of the financial rise and fall of a Chinese family at the turn of the 20th century, The Good Earth and Sons. The Good Earth was the story of a poor farmer amassing a fortune through hard work, frugality, and wise investments. Sons was about the farmer's spoiled sons fighting among themselves and squandering the family's wealth. Unfortunately, this story occurs all too often in the United States and around the globe. Most PAWs are aware of what can happen if they are overindulgent with their children. The parents can rob the children of ambition and self-reliance, making them dependent on the parents the rest of their lives. Some of the richest U.S. families' fortunes have been lost across generations. Case in point are the Vanderbilts, whose scion made his money in the early 1800s in the fur trade, and the Pulitzers, whose scion made his money in the late 1800s and 1900s in newspapers. None of the heirs of either family was able to muster the ambition or self-reliance to keep the family fortune intact or growing, or to start successful new businesses. Most PAWs want their children to be ambitious and self-reliant, so that this does not happen to them. Important people. Dr. Thomas J. Stanley. The lead author of The Millionaire Next Door, Stanley has studied and written about wealthy Americans for 4 decades, beginning when he was a business administration professor. Dr. William D. Danko, the co-author of The Millionaire Next Door. Danko is an emeritus professor at the University of New York at Albany. Author's style. Stanley and Danko have written a straightforward, easy-to-read, and entertaining book. They offer lots of statistics about millionaires, like where they live, the kinds of businesses they are in, and their consumption patterns. But they do not bludgeon the reader with statistics. The majority of the book's content consists of zesty stories about millionaires and millionaire wannabes the authors have encountered. Some of the most intriguing stories involved comparisons of 2 people who are in the same or similar professions, one of whom is a high net worth individual and one who earns a lot of money but has a net worth below what it should be. The authors look closely at these millionaires' lives and habits to explain why one has high net worth and the other does not. None of these stories were chosen at random. The authors selected each to make a point.